Are past emotional wounds haunting you? Are they getting in the way of your potential? How can we get this under control so that we can start accomplishing the goals that we have set for ourselves? We'll be covering all this and more in today's video as we dive into chapters 10, 11, and 12 of Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz. I have hand-selected one key quote that stood out to me the most in each chapter. Let's start off with chapter 10. Here we go. Emotional scars to our ego also have another adverse effect. They lead to the development of a scarred, marred self-image, the picture of a person not liked or accepted by other human beings, the picture of a person who can't get along well in the world of people in which he lives. When we develop emotional scars from negative experiences, we are apt to become hardened of heart, callous toward the world, and to withdraw within a protective shell. Emotional scars occur when people have been emotionally hurt or injured by someone or a group of people in the past. The emotional protective wall that is then built ends up causing damage in other areas of life. The wall was created to protect us against that one particular experience, but then it trickles into cutting us off from all other human beings and ourselves. With the defenses up at all times to prevent further rejection and pain, these people start to drive away the very people who could love them and help them. As such, emotional scars can dramatically limit opportunities to become successful, to continue down the road of optimal health and happiness. Emotional scars prevent you from becoming a self-fulfilled person. Self-fulfilled people have these characteristics. They see themselves as liked, wanted, accepted, and able individuals. They have a high degree of acceptance of themselves as they are. They have a feeling of oneness with others, and they have a rich store of information and knowledge. The person with emotional scars not only has a self-image of an unwanted, disliked, and incapable person, but also an image of the world as being a hostile place. His dealings with other people are not based on giving and accepting, cooperating, working with others, but on concepts of overcoming, combating, and protecting themselves from others. Frustration, loneliness, and aggression then follows. Here are 3 rules to shield yourself from developing emotional scars. 1, be too big to feel threatened. What this means is develop a thick skin. Someone who is thin-skinned is highly sensitive to others and are continually on guard, very defensive. And people who become offended very easily have the lowest self-esteem. It is the person who secretly doubts his own worth and who feels insecure inside himself, who sees threats to his ego where there are none, who exaggerates and overestimates the potential damage from real threats. We all need a certain level of emotional protection when it comes to threats of the world, but those who are thin-skinned, who become offended easily, are not properly balanced in their protection. They're on the one end of the spectrum. A strong person or animal does not feel threatened by small danger. Only a weak person or a weak animal feels threatened by small danger. In the same way, a healthy, strong ego with plenty of self-esteem does not feel itself threatened by every innocent remark. 2, a self-reliant, responsible attitude makes you less vulnerable. The person who has little to no self-reliance, who feels emotionally dependent on others, makes himself most vulnerable to emotional hurts. Every human being wants and needs love and affection. The self-reliant person feels a need to give love. His emphasis is more on giving than on getting. He doesn't expect love to just be handed to him, nor does he have a compulsive need to always seek out love from others, that everyone must love and approve him. He has sufficient ego security to tolerate the fact that there will always be a certain number of people who will dislike and disapprove him. He feels some sense of responsibility for his life and sees himself as someone who acts, determines, gives, goes after what he wants, rather than as a person who is the passive recipient of all the good things in life. Because the person with little to no self-reliance expects everything to be handed to him in life, this leaves him wide open to emotional hurts and scars, because life just isn't built that way. So develop a more self-reliant attitude. Assume responsibility for your own life and your emotional needs. Start giving affection, love, approval, acceptance, and understanding to other people, and you will find those things coming back to you. And 3, relax away emotional hurts. When we feel emotionally hurt or feel offended, the feeling is entirely a matter of our own response. In fact, the feeling is our response. It is our own responses that we have to be concerned about, not other people's. We can tighten up, become angry, anxious, or resentful, and feel hurt, or we can make no response, remain relaxed, and feel no hurt. Many studies have shown that it is absolutely impossible to feel fear, anger, anxiety, or negative emotions of any kind while the muscles of the body are kept perfectly relaxed. You have to do something to feel fear, anger, or anxiety. So remember, you alone are responsible for your responses and your reactions. You can remain relaxed and free from injury. Now, of course, this is easier said than done, and it will take some practice, but eventually you will develop mastery. Now, let's get into chapter 11. Here's the quote that stood out to me the most. This real self within every person is attractive. It is magnetic. It does have a powerful impact and influence on other people. We have the feeling that we are in touch with something real and basic, and it does something to us. When we say that a person has a good personality, what we really mean is that person freely expresses himself with no inhibition. The person with a poor personality does not freely express himself. His real self is restrained, handcuffed, and locked up. For one reason or another, he is afraid to express himself freely, afraid to freely be himself, and has locked up his real self within an inner prison. The symptoms of inhibition are many and varied. Shyness, timidity, self-consciousness, hostility, feelings of excessive guilt, insomnia, nervousness, irritability, inability to get along with others. When we overreact to negative feedback or criticism, we are likely to conclude that not only are we off course or wrong, but that it is wrong for us even to want to go forward, and encourages us to stop and stay stationary. Stuttering is a good example of how excessive negative feedback brings on inhibition and interferes with appropriate response. Negative feedback naturally allows us to all speak and talk. Monitoring our own words and hearing the words that come out of our mouths allows us to be able to talk. The reason why deaf people can't speak the same way as others who can hear is because they're not able to hear the words that are coming out of their mouths and receive that negative feedback. They're not able to monitor the things that they're saying, and so they don't know what is coming out of their mouths. They're not able to respond and correct what they need to correct on what's coming out of our mouths based on how we're forming our lips, our tongue, and everything. And so if we're consciously overcritical of our speech, or if we are too careful in trying to avoid errors in advance, rather than reacting spontaneously, stuttering is likely to result. If a stutterer's excessive feedback can be toned down a bit, or if it can be made spontaneous rather than anticipatory, then improvement in speech will be practically immediate. When excessive negative feedback or self-criticism is eliminated, inhibition disappears and performance improves. When there's no time to worry, no time to be too careful in advance, expression also immediately improves. Excessive carefulness or being too anxious not to make an error is a form of excessive negative feedback. Both carefulness and anxiousness have to do with too much concern for possible failure or doing the wrong thing, and making too much of a conscious effort to do right. In any sort of social relationship, we constantly receive negative feedback data from other people. A smile, a frown, body language cues, tonality. People with good personalities who are popular and magnetic in social situations can automatically sense this verbal and visual communication from other people, and they can spontaneously react and respond to it in a creative way. The communication from other people is used as negative feedback and enables the person to perform better socially. The person with a poor personality does not warm up to other people and is the hard to get to know type. When you become too consciously concerned about what other people think, when you become too careful to consciously try to please others, when you become highly sensitive to the disapproval from others, then this is another example of excessive negative feedback, inhibition, and poor performance. Whenever you constantly and consciously monitor your every act, word, or mannerism, again, you become inhibited and self-conscious. You become too careful to make a good self-impression. And in so doing so, you choke off, restrain, inhibit your creative self, and making a rather poor impression. The way to make a good impression on other people is never wonder consciously what the other person is thinking of you or how he is judging you. One way you can challenge yourself is to start feeling, acting, behaving, thinking as you do when you are alone behind closed doors, without any regard to how some other people might feel about or judge you. As you do this more, as you practice this more, you'll start to see that you become more magnetic. Just like with anything, you can have too much of something or too little of something. You need to have it just right. So those who have too little of inhibition continually get themselves in trouble because of overconfidence. Habitually find themselves in trouble because of impulsive, ill-considered actions. They have projects backfire on them because they are always practicing act first and ask questions later. They never admit that they're wrong, and they are loud talkers. On the other side of the spectrum, if you have too much inhibition, these people are shy around strangers. They dread new and strange situations. They feel inadequate. They worry a lot, are anxious, overly concerned. They are nervous and feel self-conscious, and they hold themselves back a lot, continually taking a back seat. Now let's get into chapter 12. Here's the quote that stood out to me the most. It is well to get clearly in your mind the fact that our disturbed feelings are anger, hostility, fear, anxiety, insecurity are caused by our own responses, not by externals. Today, more than ever, it's vital to address the bad habit of over-response, to relax from doing when we are bombarded by the external stimuli of emails, text messages, and app notifications. In much the same way as you automatically respond to an incoming phone call, we all become conditioned to respond in a certain way to various stimuli in our environment. There are a lot of external stimuli that we have become conditioned to and that we continue to respond to out of habit, whether the response makes any sense. Many people, for example, fear strangers because they grew up with parents who repeatedly said, "Don't take candy from strangers, don't go into a stranger's home or car." And then we carry over that automatic response into adulthood to where it serves no purpose, to where it closes doors of opportunity. Avoiding strangers as a child served its purpose. But now that you're an adult, it no longer serves its purpose. We can diminish these conditioned responses if we start the practice of relaxing instead of responding. This may feel difficult or uncomfortable at first, but over time it'll feel more acceptable. Also, delaying the response interferes with that automatic conditioning. So for example, if you're starting to boil up and get angry, counting to 10 will delay that automatic conditioning, that automatic habitual pattern that you have created. In addition to counting to 10, for example, you could also take 3 deep inhales and 3 deep exhales. Also, whenever you feel tension mounting or feel hurried or anxious, you can retreat to a quiet space or area or room for you to just be alone in your thoughts, to where you can decompress and to take a moment just to rest and maybe to imagine yourself in your favorite place. Do this to make sure there's no emotional carryover into the next conversation, the next project, to make sure your mood is elevated and that you're responding to people appropriately. And stay clear from worry. Most of the stories that we tell ourselves that are causing the worry actually don't come to fruition. So ignore those stories that are running through your head and focus on what is in front of you. I hope this has been helpful. It's been a lot of fun. I'll be covering other future chapters in Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz and other future videos, so make sure to check those out when those are released. If you haven't checked out the previous chapters that I've already covered, that are already released, check out those videos, and I'll see you in the next one.